As soon as your children are able to talk and communicate with you, as a parent, you should be teaching them about sexual boundaries and communication and autonomy over their own bodies. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I am a licensed psychotherapist, and I want to talk a little bit. I talk a lot actually about abuse and sex offenders and predators and things like that. I want to talk about one of the main ways that I think that you can prevent that from prevent as much as possible your child from even being a victim of inappropriate behavior from people encroaching on their physical boundaries. So one of the things that I think as parents that can be done to help protect your children is allow your child to have autonomy over their own bodies, right? So allow your child to their personality to develop, allow a child to say, no, I don't like that. No, I don't want you to touch me, or I don't want to kiss grandma, that kind of stuff. And I know it sounds like, I'm sure there's going to be people out there listening to me that like, a child doesn't know what a child wants, and, that could hurt grandma's feelings or whatever. But the child needs to learn that for themselves, because whenever there's this forced pressure from parents to make a child comply or to be a good boy or a good girl and go ahead and kiss grandma anyway, go ahead and sit on your uncle's lap and do all those things anyway, a child is learning that, like, okay, my parent is only telling me that I'm good if I do these things. And it's going to be very hard for a child to discriminate between right and wrong when someone is inappropriate in doing that and telling them that they have to be a good girl or a good boy in order to do certain things, right? So allow them to decide and allow them to get to a point where they feel comfortable with people touching, right? So children need to understand that it's okay to not feel comfortable to allow someone to touch you, right? And so I think that's allowing them to have that autonomy and that power over their own body, that right to say no, or something doesn't make me feel comfortable. And people need to listen to that, understand that, and respect that from early on. And normally children can be temperamental. They can act out and say, I don't like that, I don't want that, and then slowly start to warm up to that person and say, well, okay, I'll kind of, we're friends now, or, but they have to earn that from you. So children are going to be very blunt. Children and older people are very blunt, and they're right up front with their emotions and how they feel, and they're not interested typically in sugarcoating, especially when you're talking about like toddlers and things like that. So allow them to express their frustration, allow them to keep their distance until they're comfortable. And that's how people naturally work anyway. If you think about it, that's how people are supposed to work. Like, even for myself, for example, and not to make it about me, but just to give you a hypothetical example, as an adult, I don't like people approaching me if I don't know yet. So a good example would be, I lived in Chicago for a number of years. I've traveled all around and gone to different sort of gas stations. And one thing that'll happen at certain gas stations is you'll have like these people there that are kind of sketchy, and they'll just want to walk up on you, and so I'm like, don't, whenever I see that, I tell people, you stand over there, don't walk up on me like that. I don't like people walking up on me. So I always tell them to stay over there, ask me what you got to ask me from over there, but you don't need to walk up on me. I don't like that, because if you're walking up on me, I take that as a threat and I have to act accordingly. So that's one thing, because a stranger, I don't know you, we're not friends, so I don't like that. And that's the same thing with a child. Like, a child has to get their bearings. They have to say, well, I don't like you touching me like that. I only know my mama and my daddy or whoever, so I don't like you touching me like that. So I have to get to know you before you're able to touch me like that, before I'm able to say that I'm happy to see you or I'm happy to be around you. And another thing too is a lot of children can also sense when someone is not good, right? So they'll be like, I'm afraid of that person. I don't like that person. That person scares me, or whatever. so they can sense those things. But listen to your children and allow them to say whatever they want to say. And again, unfortunately, this also happens a lot in school, because I know some people are going to ask me, well, what about school and things like that? Yes, children have social anxiety, but again, they deserve to be listened to. And predatory behavior actually doesn't happen like once you get grown. Predatory behavior happens early on. And a lot of times it even happens in elementary school amongst peers, where you have other little boys and other little girls touching children inappropriately. So even when it comes to school, it could be in your child's best interest to listen to. It is in your child's best interest to listen to what they're saying, especially when it comes to peers, because sometimes peers are already experiencing abuse, and that sort of manifests around other peers, even at school or on the playground, where they're touching same age children inappropriately, the same way that they've been touched in other areas. So I always listen to your children, allow them to have full autonomy over their own bodies, allow them to not be so sure of people, and don't encourage or pressure children to be trusting. Don't equate being a good girl or a good boy with allowing people to touch you. I think, because most predators, I think most predators use that tactic with children, like, oh, you be a good boy, I'll give you a toy if you let me do this, that's a good kid, right? So, don't confuse reinforcement with inappropriateness or forcing a child to necessarily do things that they don't want to do or that can be harmful for them, because they will get that confused when it comes to the real deal. Because what's going to be the difference? And again, this is a child mind. Not all children are developmentally able to discern between right and wrong, and how they know when to tell somebody. Also, always make it so that your children feel comfortable talking to you about problems. I get it. Sex is a touchy subject for a lot of parents, but I don't understand. I don't understand parents who never want to talk about it, who never want to educate their children about it. Remember, I think of school. School is, to me, people can have their own opinions about this, but school to me is secondary education. Primary education, all teaching needs to start at home. Teachers and everybody else are there to kind of reinforce that. So that means reading, writing, math, basic life skills, all of that kind of stuff really needs to start at home. And so sex education, boundaries, touching, and things like that. You want to make it a safe space to talk to your children about that, and open up that line of communication where they feel safe and comfortable coming to you and not feeling judged. But they can also come to you and tell you when they're in trouble. Hey, the teacher touched me a certain way, a student touched me a certain way, somebody did something and I want to run it past you. So be open to listening to that, and let me know what your thoughts are. I hope that helps.